Good morning, everyone. On this September 27th after service discussion, we have the beautiful Dr. Lauren Schroeder today, and we have just finished watching her service titled The Days of Awe, the Jewish Quest for At-One-ment, or Atonement. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Laleen, please go first.
Thank you. Lauren, please know that I loved our service and I have lots to say and think about that. However, Michael, you were amazing. Your graphics and music and singing. There I went and did it again. Singing for us was grand. It was one of the most beautiful services, and the choice of graphics just really brought me in. And I did not want time to go by and not acknowledge that, because I'm sure that others also would have felt that you added a great deal to, what Lauren was bringing to us.
Well,
So
I am humbled, and I really appreciate you saying that. That's very kind of you.
And I want to chime in and say the music, and when you did Avenu Makenu, I was so touched.
Wow.
And the music, and then the words Aline did, and all of it, and the graphics made it such a rich experience for me, because I didn't get to see all that before today either. So that was just made it a totally full experience.
Yeah. It's so cool that, anytime we get to do something different, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and it's just, there's something like rejuvenating about trying something new, and so I would doubly thank you, Lauren, for stepping in and giving us the opportunity to do something new. So
I would add too that joke at the end went really well.
Yeah.
We had a lot of discussion about should the joke come first, and no, perfect.
I thought that was a great ending. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Add a little levity to the whole thing, right?
Laura Lee, did you want to?
Well, I just wanted to echo Laleen's compliment. I look back at when Michael was born, and his father and I looked at each other and said, "Where did he come from?"
All right, I'm cutting you off.
No, don't cut me off. Because neither his father nor I have any kind of singing voice or music ability. And Michael, I was very impressed, and it was very moving and a very nice part of Lauren's talk today.
Great. Well, and thank you to you too. Now, I'm going to put a cap on, as I'm deeply touched. Thank you for everyone who said this. But I really want to talk about the service, because there's just so much there. And JC, I think,
yeah, this is kind of a slide off of what we just sort of was doing. I felt, because of the pictures that you showed us and the music that you sang, I felt the ancientness of what Lauren was saying. And I realized eons of time when the stories began, and the Jewish book and faith and stories and way of seeing the world just were a lot with me, which is unusual for the Unitarian in me, but it's such an honored ancient story, the whole thing. So I just wanted to let you know, Lauren, that I don't know, the depth of the time involved was very impressive, Michael, because many of the pictures and stuff you put up, that was wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, no fair putting a cap on it.
Well, actually, wait, Glennis, I saw that you had your hand up, but Lauren, do you have any response for JC?
Oh, that was so true for me. I guess I have to remember what we talked about before, that I have been to Israel and I have been to the Wailing Wall, and that was such a deeply moving picture for me to remember that experience. When I was there, the women were there too, but in the past, only men. You know, in Orthodoxy, men do all the spiritual stuff, and women are really, I've understood, to be the spiritual center of the household, of the family, but the men get to do all the talking and reading the Torah and going to the Wailing Wall and doing the prayers. So the men miss out on a lot, and the women miss out on a lot. But it was very touching. All the pictures were for me, everything, with the Torah, and with, you could see the one picture where they're in probably a synagogue of some sort, and the women are above in the balcony looking down on the men. That's how it was. They were separated, but it was just deeply, deeply moving. And in some ways, I miss some of that tradition, but I'm also a very modern woman, so I would probably be very angry, you know, so in a way, if I had known better. So, but yeah, I think that it does bring back how rich the tradition is, because when I was learning Hebrew and I was learning more about Judaism, even in the alphabet, every piece of every letter has a symbolic meaning. Every little thing they do has a symbolic representation in Judaism. It's like, it's so full of symbolism and deep meaning. And it's very rich. It's very, very rich. And it's one of the, it's early, you know, it's where a lot of things sprung off from. So I'm sure other traditions are earlier, but yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and I totally understand about the segregation of the sexes, why in our progressive society we might want to be integrated, because we don't want to give the appearance of putting one group in front of the other, or like one group is more important. I think at the same time, though, there are times that women, you know, probably don't want men around, you know, that there's something kind of beautiful
And vice
about,
versa.
yeah, and vice versa, right? You know,
Sorry.
so yeah, depending on how we look at it, you know. but yeah, Glennis, I think you had something to say.
Well, I've got a number of things. First of all, as a musician, I have to comment on the music, but because it's the song itself that you chose is one that I'd always loved and always sort of brought, you know, a wellspring of emotion to it, and it was the perfect beginning of that service in my mind. So that's all I'm saying.
No, thank you. No, I love that song too.
Yeah. Now, Lauren, I have to tell you that I only had not even quite basic understanding of these traditions. And so I found your talk to be amazing in terms of helping to bring it all together for me and to understand just how rich these traditions are, as you just said. And so now I would like to study more, because it seems to be like bottomless in the wealth of the knowledge that it could bring.
Wonderful. I'm glad that you felt that. You got that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Lillian? Oh, and
I really appreciate, Gladys, what you just said, because that is one of the reasons why I felt really strongly about bringing several of the Jewish holiday experiences, more their meaning, into our congregation, because I never had a church home until our current Unitarian congregation. And what mattered so much to me and what was so significant is that it fits with my roots. And when you listen carefully to the many things that Lauren was sharing with us today, it becomes so clear that when you look at the 7 principles, you know, we talk time and time again about, you know, where does this come from? And we say the world's many, you know, religions and traditions. But in the presentation with Lauren today, you could actually see in the whole discussion of what Yom Kippur is about, and the purpose and function of that in our lives. And I mean, that just leads us right into the 7 principles. And there's more to be had from our other Jewish holidays. So I'm hoping that Lauren will come back again and also welcome her back again with something else of her choosing, where I'm not asking her to specifically do X, Y, or Z. You did a wonderful presentation, Lauren, and I would just love to listen to you again and again and again.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I get to go back to it and for a deeper understanding, because I didn't, some of it like that, but I would like to get it, you know, so I get to go back and I've taken notes and I can kind of work what you've said together in my head, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So one thing that's also interesting to me is I think it was John Paul who talked about Judaism and the Jewish people, you know, from a Christian perspective, as being like our older brothers in the faith, right? That Christianity sprang from Judaism. And do you think, what do you think the Christian might, or even just the Gentile, the non-Jew, right, receives from having a deeper understanding of things like Yom Kippur or Passover or, you know, Hanukkah or any of those holidays?
Are you asking me that question?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, for one thing, I think that there's a lot of similarity. Like the Day of Atonement is really confession, or looking deeper inside and saying, I'm sorry, or what have I done? So I think that probably all religions have that in some way. The Rosh Hashanah may be very different, because I don't know where you actually start over your book and end, because this is like the Torah goes through the end in the year and then starts over again year after year after year. But I do think that people hopefully can see that we're more alike than different, truly, and we come from the same. The whole meaning there was that we all are oneness in love, and we all come from the same. And so, and I know that when you see those peace signs that people have, those peace posts, it's all the same message. It's just that it's gotten so lost in our ego, So does that answer your question? Because I thought what I'd really like to do is maybe something in April around Passover and compare the Seder with, you know, the Last Supper, and that'll take a lot of research, but that's good. I like doing that. And so that would be a nice thing to present as well, to show there's a lot of sameness. There's a lot of.
Well, that was something, yeah, that I tried to do. I can't remember. I think it was 2 years ago. But
you did.
know, yeah, the idea that Jesus is the Passover lamb for Christians.
That's right.
Yeah. And yeah, go ahead, Martha. I totally,
Well,
sorry, I spaced.
That's okay.
Well,
Just that brings up, right after this service, there was a thing that blended Christianity and Judaism. And I don't know whether it was just because I was in the queue for that, but it's on that same path, or whether you had added it. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
But it looked like it was really extremely interesting, and I had to cut it off to get myself here. What I wanted to say was that I had no knowledge of anything Judaism, basically, until when my son was in school. He had a young man friend who did his bar mitzvah. And that was my first introduction to ritual. And I was extremely impressed and amazed at the amount of study that the young people go through. And there is, of course, we do have RE, and we do have a wonderful coming of age program that I helped our Diane through, which is extremely important. And from 12 to 15, I think it goes. But that was my first introduction. But one of the other things I wanted to share is our church, our Unitarian church in California, was part of this ecumenical group where every Thanksgiving we went to various houses of worship to celebrate Thanksgiving. And we had people from the choirs all came. And I think the last Thanksgiving that we were in Southern California, we went to the temple, which was not very far from our home. And to see an entire service, it was ecumenical, everybody participated, but it did have the rabbi, it had the cantor, it had the whole ritual, which was, you know, this is what, as part of the service committee, we have tried to have some type of ritual. I think it's really important, like we start with, like we're trying to do for our Sunday services, but rituals really of that particular faith is extremely meaningful. You know, you can liken it to the Catholic Church. I haven't been in a Catholic church that often. I was just impressed with the music and the cantor and well, just listening to Ruth Bader Ginsburg's the service that they had in the Capitol with a woman rabbi. I mean, it's the meaning is it's universal, and that's what I felt from it. And thank you, Lauren. I've known some, but you really made things clear, and now I have many more things that I don't know, and I know I don't know, and I need to figure it out. If you know what I mean. There was an awful lot of information that came into my little brain that maybe wasn't ready for it, and I'm glad that we're recorded so we can go back and look at it again. But thank you. And the music was lovely, Michael. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Nice, in other words.
Thank you. Lauren, did you want to respond to that at all, or?
Oh, no, but I wanted to share something with you that I think is very revealing for me, is that when I was little, somehow my mother put me in, I think in the summer, put me into a Christian day camp. And I remember singing, Jesus Loves Me This Day. I know, I had no idea who Jesus was. We didn't speak of Jesus in our household. And I found that it was hard for me to even say the word Jesus until at one point I started searching for who was this being. And then later I came to find out, oh my God, he was a Jewish rabbi. Holy mackerel. I had no idea that he was a Jew. And I still question. I know a lot of people in my group, Havara group, would maybe not appreciate this, and some would, to say, why did we turn away from this person? You know, because Christ consciousness is a humongous part of who I am. Not Christianity, the religion, but Christ consciousness. And a lot of Judaism is Christ consciousness. So it just shows how things break up. And again, Martha, I'm glad that you got that experience of the deepening and the questioning now, more questioning and wanting to find out more. And it really helps to bring us together and not apart.
Right. You're talking about the Christ consciousness. We have the book of Q that I do have and have read, some that are the original teachings of Jesus that they have found and have put in a book. I don't know how precise they are. Michael, are you familiar with the book of Q?
I am, and I don't believe it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
But
it's just you asked.
The issue being is that there were lots of teachings that he gave that were usurped by the Christian men at the treaty, you know, the 365. That's when it all started. And the quote unquote myth of all of that started then and was taken over. So the point being is that there was this wonderful man who had a wonderful message that we lost.
And I have been, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. That's okay. Go ahead.
And I have been studying The Way of Mastery, which Donna turned me on to. And I've read it now twice, and now I just pick it up and open it up to whatever. And it's so often helpful where I open it up to. So it's so much the non-religious meanings that he puts forth. And it's beautiful. It's so uplifting. That book changed my life. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Laleen had a comment.
I wanted to comment eventually on the significant role of Jewish mothers. In my experience of reading the words of Christ, and from my early training, in Judaism, and what I've kept of that with me throughout my life, and I've always gone around saying that I really believe that I'm a cultural Jew. and have kept, some of the more, to me, important aspects of my life. And when I get down to what is that all about, it's always, for me, the notion that comes through in Christianity of sin and guilt. And what I loved most, Lauren, about what you did today was that presentation of the deeper reaching inward of the process of Yom Kippur. In other words, the end result is not about one being a sinner. The end result is not about one carrying guilt and needing to repent for that guilt, but it's really about cleaning out, clearing out, taking responsibility for, and then acting upon that, having taken responsibility with the other that you may have harmed or slighted or whatever the situation is. And I think, and I've always felt, that that's a real healthy kind of clearing. Then comes the Jewish mother. In order to keep us as children kind of in line, though, we do need some guilt. We do need a little shaming. So you know what I mean? I mean, you got to get it from somewhere. But fortunately, I think most of us grow out of the leftovers of that aspect of Jewish moms and find a cleaner way to go through Yom Kippur.
There's a difference between shaming and demeaning. I think the key is the shaming shape is to change behavior. I don't really go that way. I tried not to, but so much of that became in what many Christian homes as a demeaning way, a putting down way, a negative way. You better not, because this is, kind of thing. And that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't give anybody strength to do anything. That just people, the emotional reaction is to shut down, period, and not even attempt to do any looking inward, So
well, certainly as Unitarians, it doesn't fit with the very basic belief of our inherent worth and dignity as a human being and everyone else's inherent worth and dignity. So we can't be equals anytime there's a one up and a one down. Somebody's getting shamed or blamed or any of that. Thank you, Lauren, for making that so clear. That was great.
So I started. Oh, can I go ahead?
Yes, please. I just want to say, could we do Lauren, then Lurley, then Jason?
Oh, okay. So I started studying some about Layla Saad. Are you familiar with Layla Saad? And she wrote a book about white supremacy. And I'm going to do a course with Bonnie Anderson about this book and white supremacy. And so I started really reading it, and then I listened to a video and a Brene Brown YouTube and all kinds of things. And really, shame is the kind of thing that if people take on that shame, it makes them feel so bad about themselves, like, I am bad. That's what shame is. I am bad, which is what I said, in my talk, was that it's not about I am bad, people are inherently good. But people go to, when they're shamed, I am inherently bad. And so how does one rise up from that? If they're consistently being shamed, it's pretty doggone hard to get healthy from that kind of experience. So that is really an important distinction between shame, I think, and as parents, mothers, we have to be manipulative. If a child's going to something that they shouldn't, you want to move them away from it. That's a bit of a manipulation because they want that. But I think we have to be manipulative, but in a healthy way, not a shameful way.
It's called shaping.
Shaping. Yep. We have to shape our children. They don't know how to do it themselves.
Wise words.
We have to know when to let go, right?
Literally. Speaking of guilt-ridden mothers,
Seriously, I am cracking up because I must have a core of Judaism in me, because I raised all three of my sons with guilt, and and I still, especially my Scott, I have to guilt him all the time. But yeah, it was a method of mine, you know, to and Michael was easily guilted into.
Oh, good. Thank you, Lurlee, for that.
Why he's so obedient, right?
Oh, God.
Oh, it was
Well,
terrible.
Sorry.
Sorry, Michael.
that's all right. JC,
Forgive me. I'm atonement.
you're atoning. Yes, you are forgiven.
Oh, shoot.
JC, if you.
Oh, about the time you were discussing, I mean, after a series of big words that were represented by, for instance, I think one of them was carrot.
Oh,
And
Simus.
okay,
Uh-huh.
I went, oh, and I realized that, yes, you're talking about the metaphors being important in what you were learning, you know, what the Judaism held. And I realized that that was my main insight when I was 12 and they were teaching me to be ready to take communion. And I said one day in the class, but it's what it means that's important, not that it actually happened, going back to some story that we were being, you know, taught as being the reason for this, that, or the next thing in the communion service. But so I really was very receptive to everything that you said about the Jewish approach to things, because it's all about the metaphoric meaning and what it means to a person that will help them change their behavior, what will help them see the situation of in which there is some kind of shame or some kind of, well, in among the, for instance, my shamanic studies, there's Oponopono, which is a belief. I think I attach it to Hawaiian, but it means I love you, thank you, I'm sorry, and one thing I can't remember, but it's a regular, those
Forgive
are
me.
the,
Forgive me.
yes, please forgive me. Oh, thank you, that's the one I need right now. Okay. I mean, and that just takes the core of everything you told us about this ancient way of being we call Judaism, and what I've learned in the Episcopal Church as the Christian way of being. This is the part that's important, is the Oponopono way, and it all does boil down to that, and it's what it means to you, not what the words actually give you in the way of a story. But I love the fact that so many of your big ideas were put together with a common, usually edible Hebrew word so that people would get the point. And anyway, that was an insight for me that all of a sudden I just think, oh, I know what she's talking about. I know why the carrot is brought into that, you know. So anyway, it made what you were giving us this morning fun. And I thank you for that.
Thank you. And you know, when I was researching some of this, like in those cookbooks that I mentioned,
Yes.
and the word Simus, it's Tzimmes, but then I guess the Yiddish word is Merren, Merren. I didn't realize that it has symbolism also. The carrot was symbolic of abundance.
Right.
Okay, that's great to know. And you know, the fish head versus, because we can be the head and not the tail. I mean, everything. There were so many more I could have put in there, but it would have made it too long. Everything had its symbolism, almost everything. And dipping the challah in honey instead of salt. on that particular holiday for a sweet year.
Uh-huh.
And it's just so symbolic. I love that. And yet I have bucked it so much, like, oh, there's all these laws. There's laws for everything in this religion. And there's like a religious thing almost every day. And like, it's just too much. But now I can appreciate it differently by doing this study for this talk. It was huge for me.
Yeah, without getting into stereotypes, about the Jewish people, I think there is a legitimacy to why there's an overrepresentation of Jewish people in law, right? In the legal profession. And I think that a lot of that is cultural. I think there's something, if you look at like Talmudic law and the study and even, the Supreme Court of Israel, which has been recognized as a legal body that just transcends, that is among the best of legal traditions in the world. It might seem overly restrictive in some ways, but then at the same time, I think there's a beauty there. Does that make sense? Is that?
To me, it does. It's like there's a deep richness to it.
Yeah.
But it is, for us in our times, it's too much.
Yeah.
Because we're much more lax about things. We're not so every little thing has to be so anymore. And I like that. I mean, in my life now, I like that. If I lived back then, and most likely I did, I probably didn't even question it. It just was how we were taught and how we were raised.
Right. Well, it would be nice to hear from somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Paul, did you feel like chiming in?
Yeah. Actually, I had two takeaways from the sermon today. Getting back to shame and guilt. I grew up Roman Catholic, and
Oy day.
Guilt is so ingrained in that religion, and you accumulate sins, and you are deemed unworthy to go and receive communion, unless, of course, you go through the process of confession and confess your sins to a priest, and some prayers that you have to say to basically buy your way into the good graces of God to be able to have Holy Communion at church. And I like the idea of atonement rather than confession in the classic sense of Catholicism, because I think that form of confession is steeped in guilt. In fact, as a kid, I had a hard time trying to find out what my sins were.
Right.
And I found sometimes
you were a kid. How many could you have accumulated?
Yeah.
I have to admit that sometimes I actually would make up a couple of sins just to get by.
Just to participate, yeah.
I can't resist this. I spent most of my life working as a therapist, and the two major groups when you talk about shame and guilt are always going to be Catholics and Jews. And it was so much easier in some ways to work with Jewish clients because the source of the guilt was always mother. Whereas in Catholic, people coming into therapy, it's like everything. I mean, the nurses got you, the priests got you, confession got you, your folks got you, and I mean, just from everywhere was shame and guilt, judgment, and wrongdoing, and confessing, and then having to do a lot of repentance for the confessing. And I remember thinking, even though I wasn't actively Jewish at the time, somewhere in my early 30s, I'm so glad I was born Jewish. Oh, you know, it was empathy. It was just a real understanding for the layers and the layers that so many clients would bring in, you know, and the difference. It's much easier. I mean, may not seem that way to a Jewish person to have to work off mother, but I'll tell you, it's a lot easier than having to work off the whole church.
A big difference, a major difference I see when you talk about it, Paul, is that confession is something that you confess to a person, and that person tells you how to repent, and it's an external process. Atonement in the Jewish religion is an internal process. We go into introspection. And so if we place guilt upon ourselves, that's up to us. But for you, you're giving guilt from outside of you. It's that should, it's that shouldn't, it's that kind of message that you did bad, or that the difference is you did something bad versus you are bad. And so a lot of Catholics feel like they are bad, because I think of that exact process of going to someone who confirms that they are bad, and here's how you get to heal this week, then come back next week and we'll do it again. So I think the going inside, and a lot of, you know, spiritual traditions are very much that way. And maybe, I'm sure maybe there's other religions, I just don't know, that say go inside and look into yourself for your healing, for your forgiveness, for understanding what you did and how to do it differently. But inherently you're good and you can do it yourself versus someone else telling you and shaming you. So I'm glad that you're a survivor of Catholic religion. Congratulations.
I've got battle scars though.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, Lauren, one thing in some of our past Yom Kippur services, you know, Reverend Gary James, for instance, he was talking about the Jewish tradition of if you have wronged someone else, then you have to go to that person to seek atonement, right? And a crucial component of that is to ask, what can I do to make this right? Is that an accurate?
Yes, I believe it is. And it's kind of like a gestalt to make it a complete experience for the healing.
Right.
And you may not get that from the person.
Right. Right. But that's something that I've included, you know, anytime that I have wronged anyone, you know, out of selfishness, or, you know, I can't remember ever really trying to do malice, but I've always said, is there something that I can do to fix this? You know, and there's great power in that, you know, and that was something that Yom Kippur taught me.
And doesn't that open the other person's heart and yours? Yes. Absolutely. Even if they say, no, I hate you, whatever,
right.
You have remember what Viktor Frankl said, you have that response, that moment of response where you can choose to get angry back. You can choose to get, okay, well then I've done what I can.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And
okay. Yeah, Martha, and then maybe Kim, if you wanted to say something.
Well, you know, I keep referring to education. So much of education only works when the reinforcer comes from within instead of from external. And you can compare that to certain religions, that everything is external and it's in a box, and this is where you have to be. And that's why the Unitarian way, or many of the people who are in this type of way, where it comes from in here, you have the choice, you know, and you're reinforced by reacting with others, and you're reinforced by having success in whatever that you're doing that helps yourself and helps others, instead of being constantly in a box of rules, where the Jewish rules are internal. You know, they are rules per se, but they are things that help you reflect, how can I do a better job, or what can I do to help whatever happened, instead of being told, you know, that you're not a good person. So that was my great bon mots for today. Thank you.
Kim, did you feel like chiming in?
Sure. I felt like sometimes that Adventist religion is kind of similar to Jewish religions. Well, for one thing, they go to church on the same day.
Yeah.
But we feel like it, when we do sin, it's between the person and God, not between everybody else. We don't go to anybody to take away our sins. And really, we're already forgiven because Jesus went on the cross in the first place. So, I had kind of like, oh, I've heard that before.
Works out nice.
I like hearing some Bible verses too.
Mm.
She said,
Yeah, I like hearing the Bible verses. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lauren, did you want to say something to that, or?
No, I just want to thank you for sharing that. So, except what I got from that, because you're a little bit broken up, Kim.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of piece together. And same with Paul. Sometimes you got broken up in your delivery, but so you come from an Adventist tradition, correct? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Seventh-day Adventist, yeah.
Do it on Saturday, and you do it on or Sabbath on Saturday, and I know it has to do with the calendar, and the days of creation seem to be a day off somehow from Christianity and Catholicism, etc. That's mainly I was thinking about. So thanks for sharing, though.
Yeah. Well, it's the idea that, thou shalt keep the Sabbath holy, and that God, if God is the ultimate example for us, and God rested, then we also have to. Right. And again, there's, it's a story, but there's real beauty in that. Yeah. Glennis, we haven't heard from you in a little bit.
I only wanted to point out, first of all, I was raised Methodist, but my mother must have taken lessons because she had the guilt thing down.
Keep coming back to the guilt. It's
honestly. But I also had a best friend that lived across the street, and her mother used more consequences and atonement. And I'm wondering if my idea of the life review at the end of life might be similar to the atonement that you would experience here.
You mean after you pass away and go through the barter?
Yeah, I actually have the belief that you do go through a life review.
Yeah.
And so this isn't so much about how terrible of a person you are as much as where you might have hurt someone that you didn't actually realize you hurt them.
Right.
Or where you kind of realize yourself that, oh, maybe I should do something different next time, So it isn't so much damnation as it is becoming aware of how you have affected someone in maybe a negative or more positive way. And so that you get to take a look at it. I try to do that here, in this life, but I am being human. I don't always see it, so all I can do is pretty much the best I can. But I like the idea of the atonement where you actually are more deeply aware of what has happened and maybe how you've behaved.
So Glennis, I'd like to share that so much of what you're talking about is becoming conscious. Mm-hmm. So if I studied more, like Lean said about me at the beginning, is that I've been studying so much about the Akashic records and about ascension and alchemy and reading The Way of Mastery, and learning that consciousness is what's so important, is that we become aware all the time, as much as we can, and more as we grow into it, of everything we be, say, and do. And that's what I work on doing now. Is sometimes I'll go, oh, that didn't come out right, or oh, that was a tone of voice that I don't really want to have anymore. And so, okay, that's an awareness. Keep being aware of that. And so it's really a consciousness. And I do have I did read a book that I would like to share on another sermon about the 4 levels of consciousness, which the Kabbalah calls universes, 4 universes. And as I read them, I go, that's just different levels of consciousness. And I would really like to present that at some point.
Be
Also,
fantastic.
what?
I said that would be fantastic. I would love that.
Good, good. Yeah.
I just wrote that down, Lauren. You're going to be stuck now. I wrote it down.
Right.
Thank you. That'd be great. Yeah.
Well, yeah, would definitely. I see more talks in your future. You know,
Laura.
when you were talking about that, you know, between you and Glennis, it reminded me of like every time somebody does something on the road that irritates me, you know, I'm forced to think about every single time I wasn't paying attention or, you know, cut
Yep.
somebody off accidentally. And I think, well, maybe that was just their one time. But, you know, it does diffuse the aggression or the annoyance, you know, to reflect on things that you've done when times you weren't perfect. So
If you're willing to become conscious of it, yeah, it's all growth. Very much growth and evolution. Sorry, personal evolution.
We've had a very dynamic and interesting conversation, but it seems like we might be winding down a little bit. Does anybody have anything else to comment on? No? Going once, twice? Okay. Well, man, that was very uplifting, and I really appreciate all of the involvement, and certainly Lauren, man, I just can't say enough nice things about your service and how it went. You know, it was fantastic. Maybe you could leave us with a closing thought.
Thanks, Michael. Go and sin no more.
Okay. Good. We got it.
Thank you all. I just so enjoyed doing this. The last time I did a sermon, I didn't do this. But then I don't know if you had a question and answer after that one.
We did.
But this is great. This is wonderful. It's an extension and getting a deeper understanding and having other people bring forward their experiences and learnings and knowledge. So I appreciate each and every one of you very much. Thank you.
Great. Well,
It's been an
and,
honor to do it.
Thank you, Lauren.
yeah, right back at you.
Back at you.
So
Thank you.
have a beautiful Sunday, everyone, and can't wait to do this again next week.
Great.
So bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.